Americans for Fair Taxation presents the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, president of Americans for Fair Taxation, and recorded by Bob Paxton, a volunteer with the Florida FAIRtax Educational Association. And now, this week's Chairman's Report.
Hello, I'm Bob Paxton with the AFFT Chairman's Report for Friday, October 21st, 2022. When the fair tax is passed, federal incentive credits will work better. When politicians are asked why they ignore the fact that an income tax punishes productivity and hard work, they never seem to answer the question. When they're asked if people will work harder if they get to keep more of what they earn, well, they ignore that question too. They simply say that income tax is fair and then rapidly change the subject. However, when the politicians want to promote something that is good for us, they know that money talks. Just look at how they encourage alternative energy sources and electric cars, for example. They provide financial incentives to those who produce them and those who buy them. Now, one of the stated purposes of the recently passed Inflation Reduction Act is to stimulate demand for electric cars. Now, electric cars are still considerably more expensive than comparably equipped gasoline-powered cars. Consequently, the politicians have decided that they need to make electric cars more attractive by offering people money if they buy one. Well, as is usually the case, the incentive to buy an electric car doesn't come in the form of a direct incentive payment. It comes in the form of a federal tax credit. Now, using the tax code in this manner allows the politicians to promise something to everyone, but limit the promised benefit only to the people and groups who support them. Here's an example. Let's say a family owes $10,000 in federal income taxes, and at least that much or more has been withheld from the family's earnings. Then they're offered an income tax credit of $7,500 if they purchase an electric car. This means that come tax time, they will owe the IRS only $2,500 and are now due that $7,500 refund, which they can use towards the purchase of the electric car. Of course, the downside for the family is that they have to wait until they file their taxes to get the money. As an article in EV Life illustrates, the Inflation Reduction Act picks the people and manufacturers that the politicians believe deserve assistance in purchasing electric cars. Here's their analysis. Only cars where final assembly took place in the U.S. qualify. Only cars selling for less than $55,000 qualify. Only joint filers making less than $300,000 a year qualify. The credit must be used in the tax year that you purchased the car, and if you only owe $3,000 in taxes, you'll only get $3,000 in tax credit and will lose the other $4,500. While requiring the final assembly to take place in the U.S. makes sense to a lot of people, if you want to encourage ownership of electric cars, why eliminate people making over $300,000? If you want to help lower income people purchase an electric car, then why not allow the unused portion of the $7,500 tax credit to be carried over to future years? And if we all need to drive electric cars, why are they making this so difficult and so confusing? Now let's look at incentives under the fair tax. When the fair tax becomes law, Congress will no longer be able to hide its bias and favoritism towards one group or another. With the fair tax, the federal income tax is gone, and so is the IRS. People will pay their federal taxes when they make retail purchases of new goods and services. The money will be collected by the states and then remitted to the U.S. Treasury. Now, if Congress wants to provide a $7,500 incentive for people to purchase electric cars, then they can have the dealer discount the price by $7,500 and send the $7,500 to the dealer. That way, buyers get their incentive immediately. There's no waiting until tax filing season because with a fair tax, there is no tax filing season. Now, if they want to require final assembly in the United States or set a limit on the price of the car, they can write those stipulations into the law that establishes the incentive. However, a more efficient way of delivering incentives is far from the only benefit we'd get from replacing the income tax with the fair tax. Eliminating the embedded cost of the current income payroll tax system would reduce the price of that car by at least 10 to 15%, making it more affordable for everyone. Competition would force the price of a $50,000 car to sell for $45,000 or less. Other incentives, like child tax credits, can be paid by simply increasing the amount of the prebate for families with children. By replacing the income tax with the fair tax, Congress can eliminate a great deal of unneeded waste and complexity and get down to the business of spending the money that the fair tax will raise. In conclusion, what is the real justification Congress and the bureaucrats have for not making incentives easy? One word: trust. Congress and the bureaucrats simply don't trust us. They believe that they, and only they, are smart enough and enlightened enough to determine what's in our best interest, and they think that we're incapable of doing the right thing without their guidance and assistance. It's time for Congress to actually trust the American people. Trust us by giving us all of our money and let us decide how much federal tax we pay by how much we spend on new retail goods and services. Trust us by passing legislation that provides incentive payments directly to us without requiring us to file complex federal forms. Trust that we will grow the economy and let the American people demonstrate how prosperous our country can become. Nothing will demonstrate that Congress trusts the American people more than enacting the fair tax. And on the other side of that coin, nothing demonstrates that Congress doesn't trust the American people more than its repeated failure to enact the fair tax. Congress, trust the American people. Eliminate the IRS and the income payroll tax system and enact the fair tax. The income payroll tax system is broken. It's no longer working. We can't repair it, but we can replace it with the fair tax. The fair tax will allow Americans to take back control over their government and their lives. Join us and take back control of our country and our lives, not with bullets, but with the elimination of one of the biggest threats to our liberty and economic prosperity, the income payroll tax. We should all remember Edmund Burke's warning that applies to our efforts to take back control. Nobody made a greater mistake than he who did nothing because he could only do a little. We should also remember this quote from George Orwell's 1984, which, if we do nothing, may foretell your and your children's future. If you want a picture of the future, imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever. So what can each of us do? We can write letters and make calls to our elected representatives and attend Zoom town hall meetings demanding that if they really want to allow Americans to take back control, the first step is to eliminate the income payroll tax system and enact the fair tax. Take back control. Help us pass the fair tax. The IRS will be gone and we'll pay our taxes when we make purchases. We, not the ruling class and their minions in D.C., will decide how much federal tax we pay. And we'll know how much tax we're paying because taxes will no longer be hidden from us. They'll be clearly shown on every retail receipt. Now, if you have friends who don't know about the fair tax, send them to FAIRtax.org. Have them watch the whiteboards under how it works, and if they agree, ask them to please join us. Then, contact your members of Congress and the President and demand that Congress pass the fair tax, the only truly fair tax.
This has been the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, President of Americans for Fair Taxation. Check back every week for news and information about the fair tax and learn why the fair tax should replace our antiquated federal income tax system. If you'd like to receive a copy of the Chairman's Report in your inbox every week, sign up at FAIRtax.org.